Luke chapter 21, starting in verse 5. And as some spake of the temple, how it was adorned with goodly stones and gifts, he said, As for these things which ye behold, the days will come in the which there shall not be left one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And they asked him, saying, Master, but when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? And he said, Take heed that ye be not deceived, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and the time draweth near. Go ye not therefore after them. But when ye shall hear of wars and commotions, be not terrified, for these things must first come to pass, but the end is not by and by. Then said he unto them, Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And great earthquakes shall be in divers places, and famines, and pestilences, and fearful sights, and great signs shall there be from heaven. But before all these, they shall lay their hands on you, and persecute you, delivering you up to the synagogues and into prisons, being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. Settle it therefore in your hearts not to meditate before what ye shall answer, for I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. And ye shall be betrayed both by parents and brethren and kinfolks and friends, and some of you shall they cause to be put to death. And ye shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. But there shall not an hair of your head perish. In your patience possess ye your souls. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them which give suck in those days. For there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. And then shall they see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. And when these things begin to come to pass, then look up and lift up your heads, for your redemption draweth nigh. I racked my brain this morning, or the last couple of days, trying to meet everyone's expectations that the pastor would be able to find comfort in such a tragedy as happened in Japan. But there is no comfort in what happened in Japan. Our only comfort is Jesus Christ. Suffering and death, unfortunately, are a part of the sinful world that we live in. And we are not to look to them for comfort. We are to look to them as a sign and a reminder of what is in store. So we don't look at these events for comfort, but we look for comfort in the midst of these events. And if you think about it, kind of timely. Last week we began a three-part series on Christianity in the face of God's judgment. Luke 21 speaks of God's judgment on the nation of Israel in the year 70 AD. And it also speaks of God's judgment in the whole world at the last day. But it also speaks of judgment even today. You see, ever since the fall of Adam, God has been pouring out his wrath on earth in the form of suffering and death. And the suffering and death, it may be earthly in its circumstances, or this suffering and death might be internal in the suffering of the mind and the heart. But ultimately, God's wrath upon the sinfulness of man is eternal torment in hell, regardless of what it is here on earth. Isaiah 33 verse 14 says, "The sinners in Zion are afraid. Fearfulness hath surprised the hypocrites. Who among us shall dwell with devouring fire? Who among us shall dwell with everlasting burnings?" Suffering and death, internally and externally, are God's vengeance poured out on the sinfulness of mankind. Everyone dies a bodily death because of sinfulness. Romans chapter 1 verse 36 says, "For the wages of sin is death." And those who died in Japan this weekend were not any more sinful than any of the rest of us. Ultimately, all of our destinies are exactly the same: bodily death. And their ultimate destiny would not have been any different had there been no earthquake. We're all headed for bodily death. And there's nothing we can do to change the imminence of bodily death in this world. But there is something that God can do about it, and God has done something about it. He has had mercy upon us in that he has provided deliverance from eternal death. And that deliverance is through the death of Jesus Christ. By faith, Christ suffers eternal death and suffering on behalf of mankind. But, unfortunately for us, it is not earthly suffering and death for which Christ died. God delivers the Christian from a state of suffering and death by suffering and death. See, this is the great paradox of Christianity. Jesus is trying to prepare us for this fact in Luke chapter 21, and that is this: that it is through God's vengeance that his people are delivered. Think about Lot in Genesis chapter 19. I think we all know the story of Lot. Lot lived, of course, in the wicked city of Sodom. You remember one night he took in two strangers who turned out later to be angels. But the wicked men of Sodom came to his house, demanding that he release the two men to them so that they could molest them. And when Lot refused, the wicked men of Sodom turned on Lot and threatened to do even worse to him. So the angels supernaturally delivered Lot and his wife and his two daughters out of the city of Sodom. And then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from out of heaven. So we see in this picture, God's vengeance destroyed those who sought to harm Lot, while God delivered Lot from that vengeance. So Lot was not only delivered from the vengeance of God, but delivered by the vengeance of God. And so it was with the destruction of Jerusalem in the year 70 AD. And so it will be at the end of the world as well. And of course, so it is day by day throughout human history as we face the righteous indignation of an angry God. For those who reject Christ, all earthly suffering and death is the vengeance of God upon sin. For those who embrace Christ, all earthly suffering and death is the means by which God redeems his people.